Today's episode is brought to you by Cobia. Designed by anglers, Cobia boats are the perfect balance of fishing smarts and comfort. It's not just best-in-class quality and performance, they have superior hull design, intelligent deck layouts, and more user-friendly helms. Cobia boats are family-friendly while maintaining that tournament-grade fishing performance. Check out their full lineup of center and dual consoles at CobiaBoats.com and give them a follow on social at Cobia Boats. Choose Cobia and have it all. Welcome to another episode of the On the Water Podcast. I'm Jimmy Fee. This week I've got Captain Dave Peros with me. We're going to be talking about striped bass fishing around Cape Cod and the Elizabeth Islands. Dave has been a charter captain, a light tackle, and fly fishing guide on the Cape for 25 years now. He's been a longtime columnist for On the Water magazine. Dave, I think you started writing for us, when, in the 90s? Late 90s?
Well, actually, Jim, I was one of the four people that started. I was the associate editor.
I knew you were an editor. I was
the associate when On the Water started, and I was going through dates today before I came, and I'm thinking 96 was the first year, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that I put the first issue together.
No kidding.
Yeah, because when Bill Huff and Chris decided the idea of the magazine, I was writing the fishing column for the Enterprise. I was also writing sports for the Enterprise, and I guess Logic said that he kind of wrote me in. But basically, my job was to find writers.
And that's not an easy task.
It was not an easy task. My big catch was Tony Stetsko, and I think it was the second issue. They've got the picture of Tony on the cover with a fly fishing customer, because he'd gotten into fly fishing at that time. I don't think a lot of people knew that about Tony, that he did quite a bit of fly fish guiding at that time, because of course that was when everybody was fly fishing.
You had a lot of schoolies then, so that would have been the mid to late 90s, and just kind of a schoolie boom and a fly fishing boom in salt water.
And if you were looking for a big fish on the fly rod from the beach, there's nobody better than you could get Tony Stetsko and noss it, which is what he was doing.
No kidding.
And that's what that picture came from, was a trip with a customer. And I had gone to Tony's shop. He didn't know me from anybody.
Tony had a print shop, right?
Yep. Tony had a print shop in Orleans. And I went and I met Tony. I introduced myself. He was the nicest guy. It's been one of the things I've found, which is really interesting, is the people you would think that would have the biggest egos, because 73-pound fish from the beach.
Oh yeah.
Charlie Cinto, 73-pound fish from the boat. Both of them were the nicest, most humble people you can imagine. And he says, "Oh yeah, I got a picture. I'd be happy to write something and do it." So, but that was my job, and was to find writers and to, in a lot of cases, sit down with them. And because, I was an English teacher.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I taught high school for 10 years. My last 2 years over here in Falmouth. And I remember one of the reasons I moved to Falmouth is we had this really cool writing program that she was putting in. I was teaching elsewhere, and I said, this is the way to do it. And the basic premise was, I don't know how you felt about English in high school, but you remember you get a paperback and you thought it was pretty good, and the teacher has just bled all over the thing. Okay, it's just every mistake, every error circled, and you're like, no, I hate writing. Okay. So this principle, this concept that the department had brought in was basically called focus correction. Real quickly, you could only grade 3 things. So if spelling wasn't one of the things you put down as a focus correction for that paper, you couldn't grade spelling.
Okay.
Okay. And it was awesome. And it was the same thing with when I was working with guys fishing, writing, because they hate their experience with writing was probably what they had in high school. Teachers, so that was, sit down and say, you can write. It's, I found the columnist. I found Steve Shareka.
Steve Shareka. Yeah,
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 that-
great. He was a beloved columnist for On the Water.
and
Oh, yeah.
I was the one who brought Shareka on. I brought Dave Beaumont on from Nantucket. I had Captain Leslie Smith from the Vineyard. Yeah, so it was kind of cool. You know, it was like a ground. When they came to me and told me they were going to put a fishing magazine together, it was like, and it was 4 people.
Yeah.
Okay, you know, and Peter McCormick was the advertising person, and distribution and circulation. That's what circulation
Okay.
for the Enterprise. But he was going to be circulation for the magazine.
No kidding.
Oh yeah, so everything was duplicate. It was Bill was the publisher of the newspaper, but he was going to be the publisher of the magazine. Chris was the advertising head, and he was going to, you know, eventually they brought an advertising person on board, but at the beginning it was Chris was doing, and my job was the editing.
So it started with just 4 people.
4 people.
I didn't
That's
see.
it.
I didn't realize that. We had Chris on here to talk about the history of On the Water. I'm getting more of a history lesson now. He
Yeah,
he
yeah.
wanted to goof around and make fun of me, but
Right. Yeah. No, it was 4 people. I mean, basically, and you know, it was one of those things. You know, how do you start this? You know, where do you know? I mean, and it was an interesting experience.
So after you left, you began chartering, guiding. that
Yeah. I went and got my captain's license, and I started doing some guiding. And you know, the big change for me at that time was when I first met Chris. And that was, let's see, I got married in 87, left teaching in 89. This is what I was doing last night, trying to remember things. This is what happens when you get old. And then I started writing the fishing column, I think in 91, because my last fishing column was 30 years later, 2021. And Chris had just started at the Enterprise about that same time. And I was a beach fisherman. Okay. My background in fishing was I had no mentors. I had no one to show me anything. No one in my family fished. No one cared about fishing.
How'd you get into it?
I had my godfather, my father's sister's husband. He was a, you know, Italian guy. He fished to eat and things like that. And so I remember some of my first experiences was going with him down over to the Municus River Bridge and catching eels.
No kidding.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it was just, but you know, I just loved fishing. It was, you know, it was something I just enjoyed doing, and I was terrible. I mean, a lot of my friends would say I'm still terrible, but I didn't know anything. And I had a neighbor next door. I grew up in Papaneset. I had a neighbor next door, and I would sit with him. And he was kind of a cool guy. He was from Pawtucket, Rhode Island, and he'd sit there and smoke his pipe and tell me fishing stories. And you know, it was the one thing that I learned was that's very different from today is you never asked anything. You didn't go up to someone and say, "So, what are you using? You know, what do I?" You know, you just kept your mouth shut and you listened. And in fact, that's how I caught my first striped bass was in Papaneset. And this was, I want to say, when the fishing side was starting to tail off, like in high school. And I'm sitting at the end of Spit and Papaneset, and there happened to be some schoolies in there. And there's an old timer next to me, and he's using the same lure, everything. And he's catching, I'm catching squat. And I'm ready to chew my fingers off. And so he walked by me finally, and he just looked at me, and under his breath, he said, "Slow down." We were using a little black over. I still have the lure, Rapalas. And he was swinging the Rapala in the current, and of course I'm reeling like a maniac.
Oh yeah, because if you're young, you don't know. You think you want to feel that thumping in the rod tip so much.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. And I also, most of the fish I caught at that time were bluefish.
yeah.
Okay. People forget that bluefish were like, at one time, that was what all the charter boats on Captain did. Jig wire for bluefish.
They were the staple. Go out, fish the shoals, and hoochies and ponytails and all those.
Yeah, and they
those
were the
things.
savior of a lot of the charter business guys around here. They weren't going out there and tonging bass. That's how they booked trips. People yanking wire and hauling bluefish back to the boat. So, but I never forget. He said, slow down. And that's when I caught my first striped bass.
Oh, it's a great story.
Yeah. And I ran all the way back home to Spit, all the way from the Spit. Just put my rod on, grabbed that fish, and just ran home. And of course, my family's like, but yeah. So, sometimes people have this perception that if you've been doing something for a while or, writing for you guys or whatever, that someone is, an expert, or something. It's like, I try to tell people, look, I'm no better than anybody else. It's just, I've been very fortunate. I've been able to spend more time on the water than you. Okay. And that was, so when I met Chris, I was a shore fisherman, and so, I know he talked about the first striped bass he caught with Bill, but I kind of wonder if he remembers that the first big striped bass he caught was, I took him, he and Peter McCormick, and we went and we were fishing the jetties at Great Pond.
Okay.
And pitching eels. And I put them both out at the end of the jetty. And it was, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Chris and I did a lot of, 2 or 3 o'clock, Knobsco Point, pitching eels.
He's told me those stories.
Yeah.
And it's, he speaks very fondly of how he would go and fish late nights. And do a lot of nighttime surf fishing.
His kids were real young. They were in bed. He'd say bye to Annie, and, I'd go pick them up and we'd take off. And he had caught some, it probably wasn't the first big bass because he probably might have caught, but it might have been Peter McCormick's first fish because Peter had heard about Chris and I. And I remember I was under the bridge playing around with schoolies. Again, my friends all saying I worry too much about little fish. And I put them on the end of the jetty, and I never forget it. The sun was coming up, and it was just that false dawn. I look out, and I see the two of them out there dancing at the end of the jetty. And they've got like a 25, 30-pound fish.
Oh, nice.
Up on the rocks. And they're just hooting and hauling. It was awesome. It was just, but, and the thing about Chris was, he's, I know when I met Chris, really, he still is a lot younger than I am. Okay. And still had that, like when we used to fish the broken down jetty at Knobsco. Okay. I would be kind of picking, and he just would, out to the end, and, because Chris is fearless.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I've seen it. If you've ever ridden on a boat with Chris in the dark, you know that for a fact. So.
Well, that was the thing is that when I bought the maritime skiff that I first bought, which ironically is I bought that originally with Gene Burke.
So you just wrote about that in our recent column.
Yeah,
how
we
you
were
and Gene got
partners. He had an aluminum boat. We both had seen a maritime skiff. We both liked the looks of it. I had started fishing with him a little bit, and we just both. It just happened to be. I said, hey, I saw this really great boat at the Falmouth Boat Show. They used to have a boat show at the Falmouth Harbor.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, they had a boat show there. And I said, yeah, I saw this really cool boat. I said, maritime. He says, yeah. He says, because he had a 14-foot Starcraft. It's a nice boat, but had its limitations. And so we. For whatever reason, decided, okay, yeah, well, he'll sell his, we'll pull it together, and we bought the Maritime, and we owned it together for a few years. Then I went into guiding, and I, needed the boat, and so I basically bought him out.
So is that boat what kind of opened up the Elizabeth Islands to you?
Absolutely. I spent a lot of time on the Elizabeth Islands not fishing. I spent a lot of time in the Elizabeth Islands going out my boat, poking around different tides, seeing how the drift went, especially in Woods Hole. And I see people all the time now. There'll be 3 guys in the boat, and no one's running it. They all set up a drift, and I there are guys I respect who do it, but they've got beat up boats. They've got George Williams skiffs. They've got something. Okay, so you bounce off a rock, or you have a maritime skiff, because I'll tell you, my new boat has, the maritime skiff. I never really, I used to go up at night on a rock, drifting.
What made that boat good for doing that? What made you not worry about going up on a rock? Well, not worry about, but less concerned about.
It had the keel. It actually, if you look at a maritime skiff, it had a solid glass keel. It wasn't big, but it was a couple inches. Okay, so if you slid to a rock, you'd hit that.
Okay.
You wouldn't, and most boats don't have that. It just comes to a V, and that's just the same thickness of the rest of the hull. Which even drifting into a rock at a knot or 2, you can punch a hole in fiberglass pretty easily, especially the rocks down the islands.
Oh yeah, all jagged, all covered in barnacles.
But I had trips where we'd drift on top of a rock, and we'd be sitting on top of the rock, and I say, okay, everybody slide off go to the left, and we just sort of slide off. And when my nephew still has that boat, and that keel is still, and that's the other thing I say to people when they talk about draft, when you fish in the Elizabeth. Draft doesn't mean squat, because you get your motor down.
Yeah.
So I don't care if a boat draws 8 inches. Maritime skiff draws 8 inches. I got my motor down.
Oh yeah, you draw more than that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So, but people, so that the maritime skiff, its weight, it just, and it was perfect for casting, because when I started guiding, I was like, I like to cast. I like to fly fish, because when I first started fishing the Elizabeth, no one was fly fishing down there. And there may have been a few guys. Maybe Art Krager was doing a little bit there, but most of it was pitching eels, jigging wire, chunking pogies, live pogies, whatever, throwing plugs. Mm-hmm. Fly fishing wasn't. In fact, I fish with guys who says, "Oh, you can't fly fish down there. No one fly fishes down there." And eventually with Gene, he would go down there and we together. He would be pitching his eel, and I'd be chucking a fly. And I'd had plenty of trips where, he caught 12 big fish, and I remember the biggest fish I ever hooked on the Elizabeth. I knew where school was. It was fall. It was great. I went down there and basically he was tonguing fish on eels. And I hooked up on a real big fish.
On the fly?
Huh? On the fly rod. Problem was, he's hooked up, and I'm yelling, "You got to get your fish. You got to help me out here, because this thing just, it's like, oh, it was like, oh, okay, this is a fish." And eventually, I shouldn't say it. He pussyfooted around with his fish and got it in, and by the time that the fish had gone, I couldn't stop. It had gotten into the rocks, and I could feel the leader. I'm going, this is not going to end up good. And it's like, bing.
Oh, man.
And it was like, I didn't say a word the rest of the trip. But, so there weren't, a lot of, interesting, funny story about fly fishing the islands is that's where I learned about the dock. You probably learned about the dock early when it first came out.
So I learned about the dock. My introduction to it was kind of weird. I went to Villanova in Philadelphia, just outside Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and there was one other guy I knew who surf fished at Villanova, and we were in the parking lot one day, and he goes, "Check out this lure I just got." He goes, "This is the hot lure everybody wants." He shows me, and it's the dock. I go, "That thing looks stupid." And then I moved up here like a year later, and it was the worst kept secret. Everyone's like, "Don't tell anybody about this lure," but everybody knew about it.
Yeah. Well, see, I did know about it, okay, because I was doing mostly light tackle stuff. So, a lot of the rods I was using stuff, you're not going to throw a dock with. Okay, it's too big.
Oh, yeah, 3 ounces, 9 inches.
But the way I learned about it was, I took a guy fly. The one thing about the Elizabeth fly fishing is every time I've hit a rock, or slid into it. I've never hit a rock running. But every time I've bumped and bounced off a rock, I've had a fly fishing. And I've gotten to the point now where I say to people, okay, before we go to Woods Hole or before we go to the islands, I need to see you cast. If you can't cast 70 feet with a beast fly, or you can't, consistently, because what I find is, okay, you're a freshwater guy or you're not, and you're throwing 30 feet. I know the fish is there, so I'm creeping because you cast, and I'm creeping, and I'll sit and it's like, crap. It's like, so,
you need to make sure they can actually reach the fish while the boat's in water where it's not
well, true, and you don't want to put the fish over. But the reason I learned about the dock was I took a guy out down the islands, and he was a terrible caster. Horrible. I mean, just... And it was so frustrating because there were big fish there, okay? But we couldn't get the fly anywhere near the fish. And a couple of years later, I saw a picture of him with a big fish down the island on the fly rod. And I'm thinking to myself, this guy either took lessons from Lefty Kreh, but what I found out was that the fly guides, they were throwing hookless docks, dragging the fish out. They'd bring it to the boat, yank the plug, and the guy would slap a big fly down. Okay?
Now,
bait and switch.
Now, from a purist perspective, is
Not
that
cool?
Okay.
Not. And my attitude is I will never do it. And
I would do it, but I'm not a purist fly fisherman. Like if you just want to get attached to a big striped bass on the fly, that's the best way to do it. But it's probably not the purest way to do it.
Yeah, but it's interesting you mention that because I get into an argument. In fact, we haven't even settled with a friend of mine I fished a lot with because you've seen it with the fly rod guys down at Monomoy, Middle Ground, strip off a line, let it go, and then sit in the back of the boat and jig.
Just stack mend and then
and just jig it. Never pick it up and cast it. And I won't let people do that on my boat. I just no. If you want to fly fish, you got to cast.
Yeah, at some point it's like, why not just use the spinning gear then? If you're going to try to spin fish with your fly rod, just cut out the middleman
right
there.
Well, the big argument that I got done with this friend was his attitude is anything is better if you caught it on a fly rod. I am so sick of people asking me, oh yeah, we got a big fish. Oh, did you get on the fly rod? Honestly, I'm more impressed the guy who catches a big fish on big wood than I am a fly rod. Okay? Because after watching the bait and switch with the dock and the mooching, but I did have a good friend, Bob Lewis, who I have an immense amount of respect for, because when you said purist, you can be purist. There's also this thing about being stubborn. And if there's one thing anybody will tell you, that I'm overly stubborn. Okay, that I can be. It's like no, you're not just jigging a fly rod on my boat. Sorry, And don't tell me you caught it on a fly fishing. You caught it on a fly rod, but you're not fly fishing. And you'd say, well, what's the difference? Well, but Bob said very interesting. He said he does. He gets inexperienced people. They want to try a fly rod. Let them drift it back, and they hook it, and they say, "Yeah, that was really fun catching that fish on a fly rod. I'm going to buy myself and try to learn how to fly fish." Cool. So in that regard, I think there's my attitude is not necessarily productive. It's you know what I'm saying.
I do. And at the end of the day, these are all made up and nonsensical rules anyhow.
Correct. Right. So
that's not really a fly caught fish, but there's no like great rule keeper up there being like, that's right, strike that one from the record, for Jim. He caught it bait and switch.
Yeah, exactly. My attitude to the bait and switch was, you got to do it for billfish. You don't have to do it for striped bass. But you know what? From a standpoint of the Elizabeth Islands, if it keeps you off the rocks, and you can drag. But I've done it. I did it one time with these guys. They had done it with these 2 or 3 captains who did the bait and switch, and we went up and down the island, and one guy threw the plug and one guy didn't. They didn't catch a fish. But then that goes back to the quality of the fishing on the islands, not necessarily the technique at all. So it's kind of all relative.
One last quick aside on the bait and switch. Now, this is taking it a step further. Kevin Blinkoff, I'm going to throw under the bus right now, has been in his kayak, and he's been bait and switching by snagging a bunker, putting it on a circle hook, and then keeping it in range and throwing his fly rod on the back of the bunker. Now, he's doing this out of a kayak, and I don't know how you do this with only 2 arms, but he's been making it work for himself this year. It sounds like it's just tangles waiting to happen, but he's been having a good time.
I've seen that guys do that before. I've seen guys live lining mackerel, live lining herring back in the day with fly rods.
Oh yeah,
yeah, with the actual herring on the fly rod. And and like you said, my attitude is, what people don't realize, if someone who's good with the fly rod, who knows how much pressure they can put, who knows angles, when you really think about it, you take 12-pound tippet and you caught 150-pound tarpon. I'm sorry, you put 12-pound mono on a spinning rod, I don't think you're going to land that 150-pound tarpon. I think you're going to break it off 99 out of 100 times, or you're going to exhaust it to the point where you have to baby it, because fly rods have so much there's so much they buffer. And the fly line has so much stretch in it.
And on top of that, the reel is a 1-to-1 reel. So
Correct.
with this, you know exactly how much line you're taking in, and you can really kind of fine tune that. Even with if you have a spinning reel and each revolution's taking in 40 inches, it's a little tougher than when you know that for every little bit you turn, that's exactly how much line's going on the reel. So
it's like the challenge now. I mean, you're probably you're fishing Van Styles, I presume, or Z Bass. Yeah, I mean, one of the problems with guys fishing big wood and fishing metal lips and everything else nowadays is the retrieve speed is too fast. I get guys on my boat and we're fishing Shimano reels, and I'm like, slow down. You fish, you reel, and I said, slower, because even at what seems like a relatively moderate cadence, you're still ripping line.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? And that plug is going upside down. It's just and when you go back to the old 704s and you go back to those old reels, they were all super slow. That's what made them perfect eel reels. That's what made them ideal for fishing metal lips and things, because they were slow. And everything nowadays is about speed. Mm-hmm. And I guess for tunas and...
Yeah, there's certain places you want it. Tuna fishing, albie fishing, jigging the canal. I know people like higher speed reels and the reason for that is to get that in quickly, so you're not jamming your jig into the rocks on the way in.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting, how equipment, makes a big difference.
Now, you'd started to mention about the Elizabeth Islands and kind of the quality of the fishing there. When you first started fishing it, what was it like? When you first started getting serious about the Elizabeth Islands, was that kind of the heyday? You think the more modern heyday, of the last 25, 30 years?
It was stupid fishing. Yeah. I mean, honestly.
What did a trip look like then?
4 hours, a dozen 16 eels, you'd get 12 to 16 fish, nothing under 40 inches.
That's crazy.
And in the middle of the day.
Now that's an interesting caveat there. I assumed that's nighttime.
No. I didn't have to do any night fishing back then.
No kidding.
And you would literally have a pack of big fish following the eel. It was ridiculously. And
now, was this only during the migration periods, like May, June, September, October?
No.
Right through the summer.
Right through the summer. They were a little more fussy, but yeah, it was really. I was spoiled. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I jumped into this whole game, and one of the reasons I jumped in, it was like, holy crap! I can get people to pay. This is easy. I mean, really. I mean, listen, I'd only had a boat and been boat fishing for what? I got 7, let's see, 80, I bought the 89, I left teaching. I started boat fishing in like 90, bought the boat in 96, started guiding at the same time. So I'd only been doing this out of my own boat for a half dozen, 8 years
Yeah.
when I started guiding, which is, I mean, crazy. Crazy. And all I did was fish. You have to understand, all I did was fish the Elizabeth Islands. That's it. I didn't do any of the stuff I do nowadays. Eels were so stupid. I call it stupid fishing. It's like live lining pogies. It's stupid fishing. Okay? And people like doing that. Again, like you said, the rules.
Yeah.
The rules. Dave Perrow's rules. Anybody can catch fish on a live pogie. I think the hardest part is getting the bait sometimes. And keeping it alive.
That is the hardest part.
Getting it and keeping it alive. And that's why I tell people, anybody who keeps live bait alive in a live well in your average boat doesn't know anything about live bait fishing. They've got a barrel, and they've got pumps, and they've got aerators, and their bait is...
Yeah, they're keeping 50 to 100 pieces as opposed to most live wells. On your average boat's going to handle, what, 12 adult-sized bunker to 20 maybe?
Yeah. Like the new boat I have has a live well, and if I could have, I would have had them just not even put it in. I don't even use it. I don't even want it. I mean, the valves are all shut off all the time, But the guys who cast net them, like I was talking to the guy from the Vineyard the other day. He said, and when you read back to the days when guys like Spider and Drayson and those guys are on the Vineyard, when they were shown by, God rest his soul, what's his name? Al Reinfelder and Lou Palmer. It was Reinfelder. Showed them out in the Vineyard about live lining pogies because they weren't doing it. And he says, I really shouldn't show you this because
it's so good.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And it's so destructive. And those guys used to go up to Paid Narrow.
To get their bait?
They'd run to Paid Narrow to get bait.
And then run it all the way back to the Vineyard?
Yeah, and the guy talked to the other day, commercial. They're doing that now because there are no pogies over by the Vineyard. They're going all the way up to Dartmouth, Paid Narrow, to get bait.
What's that round trip about? That's got to be, 40 miles round trip? 30?
More than that. It's about 40. Easy,
Yeah.
40 from the Vineyard. Sure, if you leave in New Hampshire.
That's wild.
And Reinfeld and those guys, they used to take their pogies and they used to go all the way down to Squibby. They weren't, most of the guys that are doing it now are doing it in Vineyard Sound. But these guys used to go down to, that's hardcore. To make bait.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, that shows you how valuable that bait can be if you're willing to be an hour and a half, 90 minutes into a boat ride in order to longer, just to get your bait before you're even fishing for stripers.
And the thing about it is you're going to put those in the average live well in a boat. As opposed to a barrel and having a system. Because when On the Water first came out, the big thing back then was striper candy.
Oh yeah, the herring.
Live line herring. And I had a couple of guys. I wrote an article about it. I'd never live lined a herring in my life, but I talked to a couple of guys from Falmouth who actually don't fish anymore because they can't live line herring. When they put the ban on herring, they just stopped fishing. They love live lining herring so much that they just couldn't bring themselves.
I remember. I think that ban came in 2007, 8. It was right around the time I started here, and there were so many articles we were running because so many people wanted to know, like, how can I catch fish without a live herring? Because it was such an automatic.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, and to me, that's if you're smart and you want to catch big fish with a relative degree of ease, you got to live bait fish. It's like I was telling you about the story about the fellow who wanted to caught a 50-pound bass.
Yeah. So we before we started recording, Dave was talking about he had a client who wanted to go catch a 50-pound striped bass. Said, I would like to book you to go catch 50-pound stripers. What did you tell him?
I told him you got the wrong guy. one, and then I made recommendations. Said if you know, I think the best spot from what I know is Block Island, Southwest Ledge. Go down there, and those guys still are catching. And then the thing which you said, which was, you know, being a New Jersey guy, you know, when those fish come up in the spring and they see those pogie schools, and then in the fall, like last year, I was watching. Maybe it was you guys. Was it you guys? I saw that it was a review of fall 2022 in New Jersey.
I don't know if it was
online. It may have been. I think it was online. Maybe a YouTube video.
Okay.
You know, and the guy was just going over the, you know, the beach fishing and the boat fish, and it was like, oh my Lord. In fact, one of my goals is, is guiding now that I'm getting older, and you have bucket list stuff, and you want to try. I want to fish New Jersey, and I almost got there this spring, but there was stuff going on I couldn't. But I'm going. You know what? I'm not going to go do the live line thing or whatever, but I want to go experience New Jersey because it's like Montauk. Last year was the first year I hadn't gone to Montauk probably in 15, 16 years. And I love it. I love it. And it has nothing to do with necessarily, the fishing can be great. But, 2 years ago, but it's just, I want to go someplace else. Okay? I'm sorry. I don't know how you feel about the Cape. By September in Albie season, I got to get out of here. 'Cause I'm going to kill somebody. I'm sorry. It's like, and the reason I want to get a guiding too is I like to catch fish, but I like to fish. And I like to be on the water. And as a kid, I didn't catch squat. So I have the advantage, which is if you've never really caught anything when you were younger, okay, anything is cool. Okay, so, when I see guys now and it's, it's just all about big fish and picture after picture. Oh, God, I've gotten into some people. It's like, okay, how many bass do you need to hold up for the camera? How many albies do you need to come in? It's a fish. Congratulations, you caught a fish. I've never seen you with a picture of, I think maybe in one of the headshots for the magazine. I've never seen pictures of you with fish.
Oh, that's
and I know you catch them. I'm not saying that because you don't catch squat. In my case, that's because I catch squat. But it's like, to you, it's like, I don't need it. Okay.
Yes and no. I'll so a lot of that is, I do a lot of my surf fishing by myself, or with a friend of mine, Dave Ross, and we've kind of hit a point where it's like, do I want to stop fishing and take a picture of this fish when I know they're here? Like, especially now that the windows for these big fish being in front of you are so narrow. It's like, I don't want to take a couple. Like, let's get this thing in there and let's get the plug back out there.
Correct.
And keep catching. And also, Dave would be like, no. Dave, can you take a picture of me with this? He goes, no, it's all right. It's not that big. But
I said it to my customers now on the boat. They want to take pictures. I said, nah, let's just put it in the water.
Yeah.
Or I, and I said, well, we'll get a picture, but you got to lean over the boat. You got to keep the fish in the water. And you can hold it and smile, but we're not taking it out of the water. We don't need to. One of the reasons I have bad knees, I have a lot of reasons, but now as I kneel down on my boat to release fish. But, it's sort of interesting when you were talking about the catch and release. Again, it comes back to, like you said before, the Dave Ferrell's holier than thou kind of thing. Okay, hey, you do the best you can. But, listen, you're down in Montauk, and you're under the lighthouse. That's a hell of a lot different landing a fish there and especially when you're by yourself.
Yeah.
It's one thing if you got a fishing partner who can kind of help you out a little bit.
Yeah, somebody scampered down the rocks and get it for you. But
it was really funny. I went to the canal for the first time yesterday this season. And
were you fishing there or just watching?
No.
Just observing?
I'm too old for the canal. The canal's too scary.
I've seen guys 20 years older than you at the canal.
I understand, but I used to get down right. There's like 4 spots I used to fish in the canal. They all were mussel beds that I could wade on out in.
Yeah.
I like that.
Those are the best spots.
Yeah. But fishing from the riprap, I have no interest in breaking my neck. You know, I mean, and it is scary there.
What's scary is there could be a rock you've stepped on 100 times, and the 101st that rock's going to roll.
It's going to roll. Or the slime coat was different, but it was really funny because even the canal. I was talking with this guy. There used to be a company that their plugs, they called them old school plugs. That was their name of the company. They don't make them anymore. And the guy was talking about, he says, yeah, he says, all their plugs had cut hooks. I said, that's why they're called old school. You didn't use splits. Splits were for, no one, it was all cut hooks. And even nowadays, guys who certainly, you would never think of putting a split on a BM.
No, I know you're a big collector of Beachmaster lures, and those are all designed to be fished with cut hooks.
That's right.
So, and the cut when we're describing cut hooks, we mean when you're attaching a hook, treble hook to a plug, instead of using a split ring to connect it, you would use a pair of wire cutters, open the hook up with pliers, put it on there, and then bend it back into place. And so, what are the advantages of it? Besides how the plug swims, what are some of the other advantages?
I think one of them is that in some plugs, they'll marry.
Yes.
If the way that you said, the way the designer put the hooks, like if you have two belly hooks, and if you put splits on them, they swing together and they'll actually marry.
That's right, because the hook's going to dangle a little bit lower, each one because of the split ring, and they could potentially catch each other on the cast.
Yeah. The other thing is, I think, like if you talk to someone like Bobby Glauder from Beachmaster, balance. I mean, the thing about plastic plugs, which is kind of neat in a lot of ways, is it's eliminated a lot of the. Well, it's good and it's bad. I like to tinker. I don't know how you are. I like to tinker with equipment. I like to work on reels. I like to fool around with plugs. I like to change hook configurations. I like to play with knots. I like playing with fishing tackle. And with plastic plugs, in a lot of cases, you really don't have to tinker.
There's not much besides maybe loading a hollow-bodied plug. There's not much to do with with a bomber or a redfin besides the loading. Nothing you can do to an SP Minnow really.
Right. Do you know Paul Moriarty?
Oh yeah, I know Paul. Paul's a tremendous plug builder, great fisherman, and all around just super nice guy too.
Super. But Paul jokes. I did a talk with him at Osterville Anglers Club. I had him come along because I did a talk about collecting, but then I did a talk about building. And who better than Paul?
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't build plugs. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm too lazy. Do you?
No, I don't have that in me. I am, when we talked about tinkering, I thought of, I have an Abu Garcia big game that was my favorite canal reel that I went to take apart and fix, and it's still in like multiple bags, the pieces of it. So I need to improve my tinkering.
Yeah. Well, hey, that's how you learn, because all of a sudden you open up and you hear a boing. And it's like
the spring's gone
the
forever.
Spring is bouncing off a wall somewhere. But it was really interesting because Paul, Paul's he's that old school tin boat. Mm-hmm. It's really funny watching Paul during Albie season because he's always hooked up, and he's on that tin boat, and he's got these guys in their rockets, their rocket regulators, and and he's there, and he's always hooked up, and. But he fishes the Elizabeths with George Chrisman.
Mm-hmm. One of the Falmouth fishing doctors who you write about regularly in your column.
Which, I was thinking, I'm going to write a book about that. People always say, you got to write a book, and I'm like, writing for you guys, to me, is not work, okay? Because it's, I can, pretty much sit down and write a column fairly, quickly, although I feel badly for you guys because, I never reread anything I send you guys.
Your stuff comes across extremely clean. It's always interesting. It's always some of the most interesting thing in the issue every month.
Well, I appreciate that. But I a couple of times I finally had my wife read stuff because I knew I was going off on a tangent. I usually end up writing 2 or 3 columns of the same column for you guys because I start writing and all of a sudden I start veering off, and it's like, whoa, okay, because I start getting into, purity of fly fishing or how easy it is, and it's like, now bring it back, And so I did have my wife because I said, I just need you because I just feel like I'm out to lunch. But recently I said, no, you know what? Just write, go. If Jim reads it and Jimmy reads it and Kevin reads it and says, they'll fix it. Because I was like that with the Enterprise, 30 years of fishing columns. And I never edited, given what they were paying me. I mean, you guys at least don't, they were ridiculous. But so it's like, no, you don't get edit. Yeah, sorry, you don't get edit with, but.
Yeah, the book about the Falmouth fishing doctor.
Falmouth fishing doctors. And I'm thinking that would be a kind of a cool book.
So the three of them would be George Chrisman, Alan Quartz, and Art Crago. Is he?
Art Crago.
Yeah.
But then there's also he's going to shoot me offshore. He used to write for you guys.
Pilcher.
Yeah,
John Pilcher. Yep.
And there are other ones too.
Oh yeah. So
but it's to me it would be such a, because to me George Chrisman is one of the most fascinating people you can imagine.
Oh, yeah.
The skills.
And they're so dialed into their tackle, George especially. Now, one of them, I assume this isn't an illegal thing, but they X-rayed the plugs. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, George's X-rays. Yeah,
So-
Saltwater Edge
Yeah.
had a guy talking, and he had some of the X-rays. Oh yeah, that was when George was on duty. At the emergency room or whatever, from what I understand, or whatever, and things were slow, he'd X-ray plugs. Which, when you think about
That's legendary, man.
It's so cool.
See where the weighting was that way, see exactly how that plug was put together that made it act a certain way so you could replicate or even improve upon it.
Improve upon it. Yeah, and I think that's the thing about, and that's where the wood, we talked earlier about the plug thing. That's where the wood plug thing comes in cool because, wood, plastic got no soul, and it's so funny because Paul was telling me about a story with George, because Paul said, when he says, to fish the Elizabeth Islands, you just need one plug, Magic Swimmer. And it drives George crazy because he's got his wood and Paul's down there tonging fish with this Magic Swimmer. And, George is pretty intense.
I've never fished with George.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever been on the same beach fishing with him.
Yeah.
I fished with Alan Quartz. I fished with Paul, but I've never fished with George.
Well, of course, they give Alan, because supposedly Alan can't fish plugs, he fishes eels. They love to crap on him about his eels.
Alan fishes harder than anybody I know.
Alan, did you've read Reading the Water, haven't you?
I've read Reading the Water, and he also had stories in a book called Striper Tales about
Yes.
some of Alan's adventures and expos. I want to get him in here telling some of these stories.
The best thing in Reading the Water is I forget what chapter it's in, and they talk about Alan Quartz coming out of the fog looking like a zombie.
Yes. So Reading the Water is a classic book, kind of a collection of surf fishing stories from Martha's Vineyard, written by Robert Post. It's out of print. Right?
Yeah, it's out of print. Yeah.
But if you can
can
find
still
a
buy
used
used copies. It's such a great book.
Yeah,
It
that description of him's fantastic.
Oh, because if you've known Alan, it's like
I've seen it. I've seen that in person.
Yeah. So
we've been on the same beach together. I didn't even know he was there till we were leaving.
Right. Yeah, and he just is. But Paul. So a funny story. I'll probably get in trouble with this. George will probably never talk to me again. But George got so fed up with Paul with the Magic Swimmer that he made a wooden Magic Swimmer. And the funny story was, I don't know if he was in Sipawissat or they were, but he didn't close the clip or attach it, and it just.
This is the wooden Magic Swimmer. Oh no. That's revenge gone wrong there.
Yeah, bloop, bloop, bloop. But, but again, Magic Swimmers, look at it in the canal. what was that, 5 years ago?
Plastic plugs work. I catch a ton of I fish a lot of plastic plugs. I fish the dock. I fish all of them. But you're right. There's something a little extra about catching a wood plug. You know, it was shaped by somebody. Somebody put some love into making that. And it does wood, and it's different. Each one's going to be a little bit different than the one before it because you can't control for the grain of the wood.
Nope.
And you can, the way we got started on this was tinkering. You said with wood plugs, you like to do, you can tweak them and change how they act even after they've been made.
Sure. Different size hooks, adjustment of the hook eye, weighting, you know, I mean, where you put the weight. You know, a lot of guys don't even realize that I think the original darters, they don't have wood, weight.
Really? Now, who made the original darter? Was it? It wasn't Gibbs, was it?
Yeah.
So Gibbs made the first darter.
Yeah, I think it was Gibbs. Well, no. Well, who knows?
It's either Gibbs. I should know this.
Gibbs made the first wood darter. I'm pretty sure. I mean, Gibbs. You know, to their credit, a lot of guys who are good plug makers acknowledge, you know, and these guys are historical figures themselves, acknowledge that Stan Gibbs was the man. Mm-hmm. He was the man. I mean, have you ever seen any of his experimental stuff that he was screwing around with?
I haven't.
Have you seen his flounder?
No.
I'll tell you a funny story about the flounder.
Well, so describe that for me?
The flounder is a big piece of wood. It's a slab of wood, and it's teardrop, and it's not rounded necessarily, but it's like faceted at the top, faceted at the bottom. Got a big weight. That's Stan Kuja. Stan Kuja used to pour weight for Stan Gibbs. And it's at the base of it, and you cast that, and basically it's just a flat, it's just a shaped slab of wood with a flounder shape. But he had amazing, because he was a great carver, but some of the experimental stuff that you can collect that he came up with, but that flounder thing, it was interesting. Stan Kuja gave me a signed flounder. There aren't many around. There are only like 4 or 5 out there known.
I was going to say I've never even heard of it. So
you know, I'll bring it by for you, and you should put it in. I know you guys do the plug thing of all the new stuff. You guys should start something about old stuff.
I want to get more into the kind of classic and historical designs.
Yeah, you know, the old stuff. The old guys were pretty damn cool. When you see some of the plugs that you know, you realize that just getting parts, because this is like World War II. Afterward, getting metal, scrap, it was, and they were cutting lips by hand. They didn't have dies. They were, Bob Pond, the first series came in, that all the lips were hand cut.
That's not an eeasy. Oh man, I can't imagine like the hand cramps. You must.
The hand cut, and then you've got to bend them, and you've got to. Yeah, it's cool. But the Stan Kuja, a lot of people don't. You know, again, people know the names, but Stan was super talented guy, great guy, and he had a flounder signed by Stan Gibbs. He gave it to me.
Wow.
And I'm embarrassed to kind of tell the story because I kind of regret it, but it's kind of had a good ending. Is that you know, big money. I mean, when people realize, I mean, I know a plug that just sold for $5,000.
Really?
Yeah.
A striped bass plug?
Yeah.
I didn't even realize the collector's market could get that high for.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you have the box,
yeah, and
it's pristine, and it's a certain color, and the other thing about it is it could have different hardware. Just the hangers.
Yeah.
Because you know everybody uses swivels now. Back then they also used hangers. Creek Chub was famous for hangers. So if you got a plug with hangers, it could be worth double the price of one with swivels.
Wow.
This crazy stuff like that. And the paint job, it could be a little different, a little, you know. So, yeah, it can get a little crazy. But anyways, I had the flounder, and someone wanted a flounder. And I'm thinking, oh, you know what? I ended up getting $500 for it. And because I could have used the money when it did. It was like money was tight, and said, you know what? It's a piece of wood.
Yeah.
Whatever. And the paint job on it was just cutting, diagonally, white, yellow. That's it.
Oh, okay.
Spray paint, basically. Yeah, no, nothing. The wood wasn't sanded real smooth. It just when you get it, you're gonna go. So I sold, and as soon as I sold it, I regretted it because I don't know how you are, but when someone gives me something, okay,
Yeah, you
they're entrusting it to me, and this was signed by Stan Gibbs from Stan Kruger, who I had a lot of respect for. Actually, I wrote an article about Stan for On the Water back in the day. And so I had this thing and I regretted it. And then I found a couple of years ago, there was an auction and the guy I sold it to, who was part of that plug collecting club, Saltwater Lure Collectors Club, was selling his collection. So I look in the auction and there's the plug. But I knew I couldn't bid. I bid up to a point, but I knew I had no chance.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of guys who collect stuff who just have, man. And they'll spend anything.
Oh, to complete their collection. Like if they want, I know people with Beachmasters will be like, I want one of every style in a certain color. Like I want the gasoline color in every style he makes. So that's what you're doing. Like if it's that last one the person needs, they will pay whatever they have to for it.
So I get into, and you get into the bidding frenzy. It's like sharks in the water. And so I just, it's not going to happen. So last year I was at the club show and I saw the plug. And I had sold plugs to the fellow who bought the plug. Nice guy. His name's Kevin Bristow. And, I told him, I said, Kevin, I was glad that he got it because he was a nice guy and he collected. And I was like, man. And so I told him the story of the plug. And I said, if you ever decide to sell it, I'd like to buy it. And he said, well, it's not part of my collection now. So I don't think, well, this year he came up to me at the show. And he said to me, he says, I'm selling it. And I know your story. And he sold it to me. And I'm not going to get into how much it sold because it didn't make any difference. That I would have sold my whole Beachmaster collection to buy. And so I got the plug back.
That's pretty cool. It's funny to see it come back home.
It was like, and I wrote a story about it on the club website. And they said, it's like, okay, karma. And I was so thankful to him that he remembered and that he was very fair to me. I have to say, he was super fair given what he paid for it. So, and that doesn't happen a lot of times. So big shout out to him for doing this. So I got the plug back and it's in, I built a shadow box for it. And it's like, okay, this ain't going anywhere. Oh. It's going in my casket. Or actually, it's going when they burn me, I'm going to get cremated. That plug's going to get...
Toss that in there.
Yeah, toss that at the same time.
The incinerator.
Yeah, so...
So that's interesting that see, I never really thought about that. You see the lasting designs from Stan Gibbs where it's like the pencil popper, the dart, or the casting plug known as the bottle plug. Yep. His needlefish. Those are still being made today. Mm-hmm. You don't think of the stuff that ended up on the shop floor that never really made it into wider production.
Yeah, right, exactly. Or that he carved out himself, and he had an eel plug.
Oh yeah.
It was just, it was wild. I mean, the stuff is really, these guys, they were so creative. And did you ever get you probably aren't old. Did you ever go to a shop in Sagamore?
No, I've never been.
Oh, well, the shop, it's not there anymore. But he had a second shop. You could go into the shop and you could buy plugs at his house.
No kidding. Up till when?
I want to say 70s.
Okay.
Late 70s, something like that. Yeah, you could go in there and, it may have a nick in the paint or something else. Yeah, you could buy seconds there.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, he was pretty...
He did his testing in the canal, too, since his shop was in Sagamore. And
absolutely. Did you know that he used to trap minks on the canal?
Oh, really?
The canal had they've got the rats, but they also, from what I know, the minks. He was a big trapper.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh, that's how he made his living. He making plugs and fishing and selling fish and trapping, and he was a real outdoorsman. He really, big guy. The other thing was he was but yeah, he was pretty. He was pretty talented guy. But it's interesting. The other guy, a lot of people don't pay attention to, was Bob Pond.
Yeah, the Adam plug. Now the Adams haven't had quite the lasting legacy of Gibbs. I mean, he has. Don't people are going to want to jump down my throat on that. Absolutely, Adams is a classic lure company, but you see his design more in what other people are making these days.
Well, yeah, the
People
Adam
taking
40
the
and the
A40.
juniors. Yeah, because the reality is the company passed on to the company and they haven't maintained it. I mean, all of them stopped making the 40.
I've got one of the. It's a different plastic than like the Super Strike plastics.
Oh, yes.
But I remember I got it in my Christmas stocking one year. I don't think I've thrown it a couple times, but I'm sure it's a far shadow of what they were when he was originally making them.
Whoa! You have a 40.
I've got a blue swirl A40.
Okay. Yeah, no,
from like the late '90s, maybe early 2000s.
No, but those were they were still making those. Those were no. That's the original. It's that hard plastic.
It's like a little tacky too.
It's not. I wonder if that's when they sold the company and the people, because I know they screwed up the junior. What was the name of the company that bought Adam? When Adam sold out, when they sold out to Smoker Baits.
Okay.
And Smoker Baits didn't get because you have to know that the 54, the old Junior 54 is like one of the best eelskin plugs ever.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's my favorite eelskin plug of all time. I mean, that thing is just. There were different 54s too. He changed. If you read about it, Surfcast, I think that you can actually, that there were two, they actually modified it slightly. They were all called Adam Juniors, but they weren't the same Junior. And they swim a little different.
So my favorite eelskin plug is the Spin Adam, which was an even smaller one.
Yeah,
That they called it that because you would throw it on spinning tackles.
Yeah,
The other stuff was heavy enough for the conventionals they used back then, but the Spin Adam was, 4 inches?
Yeah.
But that's a great eelskin plug.
Yeah. The Spin Adam was 3/8 or 5/8. And then they made a 7/8 too. Maybe you were the 7. But yeah, they were but the thing that's interesting about Bob Pond is that he was like the first guy to go into plastic.
Yeah.
He only made wood for a certain length of time. And those were striper Adams. Okay, they weren't Adam 40s. They were striper Adams. And they were wood. And he did them for a certain number of years. And then he went into plastic. And when he went into plastic, no one, people didn't, the charter captains who were all big wooden guys, they wouldn't touch the plastic.
Really?
Oh, yeah, no, plastic was, and then they finally realized that, they swim the same. They're actually probably more durable, less expensive, perhaps. I don't know the prices, more colors, and they really caught on fire. But when he made that transition, that was big. That was like a no-no. All those guys were wood. Everything was wood. And when he was the first one, just like in the modern era, Musso was the first guy who jumped into plastic. And because again, he and Pitchney and the rest, they were all making
all
wood.
carving them. Yep.
It was all wood. But the Adams kind of really, it's a very cool story that the different variations he made. He made my favorite plug. Did you ever hear? You've heard of the Stinky plug, right?
No.
You never heard of the Stinky plug?
I haven't.
The Stinky plug is classic. Do you remember a guy, Arnold Lane?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, he had the Arnold Lane juice. Remember his juice?
It was a fish attractant? Or?
Yeah. And so what happened was Pond made the Stinky Adam. And the Stinky Adam had a chamber, a screw thread, and you unthreaded it, and you came with Arnold Lane juice. But they also made ones with skins. So you could go in, you'd buy the box, and it'd have the juice and the skin either on the plug or separately. Problem is, it didn't sell well because then they stunk like hell. Because and some collectors still have original Stinky Adams in the box with the skin, the
man.
original skin.
So eel skin.
Yeah.
What's that? Oh man, it's got to be mummified at this point.
50, 60 years ago or something like that. Yeah, the old Stinky Adam. That's a plug that you get huge money for.
Oh, I can imagine.
With
There
all
can't
the-
be that many of them left.
With all the components. But that was, and of course the advantage. But yeah, it was so. And there were other guys who made plugs. Steve Campo had a plug with it's called Trophy Lure Company, and it had a thing you unscrewed, and you put juice in it, and it would kind of, it was just, and those guys were, every advantage they could get, they were always looking for an advantage. But and it's kind of sad, not many guys use skin plugs. It's like the canal. When's the last time I saw a guy throwing an eelskin rig?
No, and that was. I felt like when I first moved up here, and guys were still jigging with conventionals a lot.
Yeah.
They hadn't switched over. Eelskins were perfect for conventionals because they were very much of a less is more
Right.
type of presentation. So when we're talking about eelskins in the canal, there are these specialized jig heads where it would have kind of like they made a few different types, but there was a collar to put the eel skin on. Some
Yeah.
of them would be drilled straight through.
Straight through, so the water would
So
go through and balloon the skin up. They typically had wire molded into the head with 2 hooks, and you'd put the skin over it, and with the water going through, and back in the day, every hardcore canal guy who skinned had his own eelskin rig. They would pour their own lead. They would shape, the head shapes were different. There were even guys who had wooden heads.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
They had a wooden head, and then off of that, they had a collar, and then off of that came the hooks and the wire. So it would skins. I mean, you used to go into, it's kind of sad. I used to go into Red Top or Mako's or any of the canal shops, and they'd have boxes of skins.
That's somebody wrote a story for us. It might have been Carl Johansson wrote a story where he's like, before he went to the canal, you would stop at one of the shops.
Yep.
You would pick through
Sure.
the box of eelskins to find the ones that were best for you, and then you'd rig them on your way to the canal before
Yep.
you started fishing that day.
Yeah.
And that's something that has really gone out. Kind of a
Oh yeah. Well, no one sells skins anymore.
you've got to skin them on your own, and
Well, the thing is, where the best time of year to buy skins used to be, well, it probably still is around Christmas time in fish markets that serve Italian communities because they love eels, and they skin the eels. And so you could get huge skins because, of course, that's the challenge in a lot of cases. That's why, the spin atom was great. Needlefish were great because you didn't need a big skin. You try to skin like a Atom 40. I mean, you need one big...
that's coming from
One
2
big
foot to
fat-
30-inch
one
eel.
big
there.
fat eel, kind of thing. But I mean, guys used to skin, and there are still guys who skin their own eels. It isn't that hard, It's just that it's messy.
Yeah.
But you know what? I have my funny story about skins was normally I kept my skins salted in a fridge.
Yeah, the kosher salt.
Yeah, in the basement. And I happened to have a container that I had bought some from Dick Hopwood up at Mako's. And he put it in the white worm containers, that look like Chinese food containers. So I put them in my refrigerator, and my wife opened them up. It was filled with eelskins. That was the last time eelskins were ever in the refrigerator upstairs.
You got to get your own fridge for
Yeah,
them.
they were going downstairs. Because I still skin. I still eelskin plug.
It's
just
you can't match that action. Not even the most supple or softest soft plastic is going to move the way an eelskin moves. And it's just
a jointed plug doesn't move the same. Nothing moves like an eelskin.
and it's at the risk of becoming like you. There's a couple guys keeping the flame burning for them, but it's one of those like lost arts of surf fishing. Like raking sand eels is another one that guys
Exactly.
used to do.
I was fishing with somebody last week, and the same thing. Oh no, Monday, and he used to vacation in Barnstable, and he'd rake his own sand eels. And the first time I saw a guy doing it in a boat, He's doing the circles with the rake, and he's dragging the rake behind him. I'm looking, this guy's nuts. What's he, stoned? And he was dragging his rake behind him while he spun on the flats. And that's how we, but no one you can't go to a tackle shop and buy fresh sand hills. No one rakes them anymore.
My first year coming up to Cape Cod, 2001 was the first time I ever visited here. And we went to Blackbeard's Bait and Tackle.
Yeah.
And we went in there and we said, what should we get? He said, you should get the black eels because they called the regular live eels
black eels.
Get some black eels and get some sand eels and go to the beach. And man, it was automatic. We fished the sand eels on the Pompano rig.
Yep.
Caught fish, I think small bluefish and small stripers on that. And then as soon as the sun went down, switched over to big eel, the black eels, they called them, and caught big bass.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
the
different scene. And that's only 20 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. The thing about sand eels is what most people don't realize is that they're like one of the best fluke baits.
Yes.
It was Dottie Hopwood, who used to own Mako's with her husband. The family, the kids still own it. But she used to tell me about a fluke sandwich. I said, well, because I'm the world's worst fluke fisherman, by the way. I couldn't catch a fluke. She'd say, fluke sandwich. And I said, well, what's a fluke sandwich? Because they used to sell chubs, killifish, mama chugs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they had a tank going. And she said, eat a chub, a sand eel, and a strip of squid.
So that was the fluke sandwich.
That was a fluke sandwich.
That's funny. So that's an extra. So down south, it's always a spearing and a strip of squid, or a squid and minnow.
Yeah.
Which would be the chub. They call them chubs up here,
Yeah.
killies on Long Island, and minnows down south.
Yeah.
But they're mama chugs.
Mama chugs, yeah. And they. I mean, my God, it's like flounder and fluke. I went flounder fishing in Virginia, off of the Rappahannock River, and. I mean, the first one I brought in, it was probably 7 pounds. I'm used to winter flounder. And I'm looking at this thing going, holy crap. And then it bit me. And I was like, that ain't no winter flounder I've ever caught before. It was
Something's wrong with this
yeah,
one.
well, no, so they call them flounder down there.
Oh, yeah. That dividing line's like Barnegat Inlet. It's where the fluke becomes flounder south of Barnegat. Maybe it's south of LBI.
Yeah.
On New Jersey.
Well, you guys also have bunker.
That's right. Pogies. I don't know where the divide line. Maybe Rhode Island is where they start.
I think it's a
pogies.
divide. Where's pogies? But down in Florida, there's a place they call them pogies.
Right. And Louisiana, they're pogies.
It's like, I mean, how did that happen?
I want to do. I've been wanting to do this forever. Is do like a map of like here's where each thing's called. This is where it's a scup, and this is where it's a porgy. Things like
exactly.
that.
Or blackfish and it's a tog.
Exactly.
Where is that? Speaking of which, by the way, I met a guy a couple of years ago in Montauk who knew you. And I wish I had gotten his name in. He knew you from when you were a kid fishing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He was boat fishing, but he mentioned, he said, Jimmy Fee.
Oh, that's
he was
funny.
an older guy, and he said, Jimmy Fee. And I said, yeah. He says, oh, yeah, he was hardcore. I said, yeah, he was, he says, I used to do a lot of beach fishing back then. He said, wherever there were fish around or something was happening, he would pop up. So
that was the benefit of working at the tackle shop back then. Is
yeah,
I kind of
so
had
your reputation is well known. It's like
that's funny.
Yeah. So it was like, oh yeah, and he says, yeah, I haven't seen him in years. If you run into him, when I go back to Montauk this year, he stays at the same place I do. Do you still go there?
Montauk. I have not been to Montauk in years. It was an annual trip for me for the longest time, and I moved here. And it became tougher and tougher to leave Cape Cod. And I think that's a lot of Cape Codders' problem is like crossing the, well, I'm a Wash Ashore. I'm not technically a Cape Codder, but crossing the bridge.
We all are.
Yeah.
Even the ones that came over in the Mayflower, they're a wash ashore.
That's true. You know what?
That's what I love to say to someone. I was talking to someone that they go back 13 generations in Mayflower. Oh, so your relatives were wash ashore. That doesn't go. It's like
no.
It's like, but yeah, you'd be sad if you went to Montauk.
It was when I went there. I remember there would be a morning blitz and an afternoon blitz, and we would, my dad and I would go, and I remember we'd drive out in the afternoon, and you would just kind of come over into the state park, and you would see them. You'd see all the boats bunched in close to the shore and just whitewater. You're like, oh, the afternoon blitz is right on time. You'd get down there and you catch a mess of them. And they were generally small,
Yes.
but if you got some nasty weather and northeast wind,
yeah.
then the fishing was, unbelievable.
Oh yeah, but and the reason you'd be sad is because kind of like with me with the Cape, and it's like the Hamptons are in Montauk now. Remember Saldivars?
Yeah.
Gone.
Oh, no kidding.
Oh yeah, Saldivars is now a restaurant, kind of a higher end restaurant. $25 cheeseburgers, nightclubs, all the. I mean, this is the only thing the Cape has. Where do regular people live on the Cape? Okay, where can they afford? And the same thing with Montauk. People sold out, and you've got but the fishing part, to the credit, they don't have that the big access issue that you have here necessarily.
Yeah, they're maintaining the access for surf fishermen. I mean, it's kind of woven into the culture there.
Correct. That whole culture of fishing, it just seems that, and you guys have had to adjust to it. I mean, how many articles a year, or how many times you get submissions about fishing the beaches on Cape Cod?
Not too often now.
When I was a kid, I used to read the Fisherman. You'd read Saltwater Sportsman. It was all shore fishing. That's where Frank Dagnall started doing all of his articles.
Oh yeah.
It was all regular shore fishing.
I mean, Woolner would drive from central Massachusetts to fish out here for the weekend, and Frank Dano would spend out the whole summer here and write for Saltwater Sportsman.
Yeah. So when I was a kid, that was the dream thing because I wanted to fish the backside.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was the kid, so I couldn't get there, and my family sure as hell weren't going to drive me to the backside and drop me off, and I had no one to fish with, so I basically knew Popponesset and a few spots, but that was like fishing Cape Cod. Okay.
And at some point, it kind of morphed, at least from a shore fishing perspective, to the canal. Like people go to Cape Cod and that's where they're fishing from shore.
Right.
That's and when I first came up here, I didn't even look at the canal when we drove over it. You're like, okay, we've still got 40 minutes to go before the real Cape starts.
Exactly. And I think that's why in a lot of cases the canal has become so super crowded. One, when you had that 2 or 3 year period, the fishing was just stupid. But it's not as good right now. I mean, it was good there for a couple of weeks, but when you get into your summer stretch, I mean, it's not shooting fish in a barrel. Mm-mm. But it also is a place where, for a lot of people, they can access. Okay? Access is easy. You got parking lots. And so you got crowds,
And that's a consequence of the reduced access you're talking about. Mm-hmm. If there's less places you can go to fish, then the places you are going to be more crowded.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that go into fishing spots being more crowded now, social media, but reduced access is definitely a major part of that. So that's something when you see that happening, that's a good rallying call for fishermen to say, to help fight to maintain their access to these waters because, it's a major part of Cape Cod culture, Long Island, New Jersey, Connecticut. Like it's the Northeast is part of our coastal history here. Yeah. So we need to, Dave, I just wanted to go back to the eel fishing, what you were calling I forget how you described it, stupid fishing, the eel fishing, when it was really good.
Yeah.
And the way you eel fish along the Elizabeths, I mean, a lot of guys think of boat fishing with eels or think of 3-way rigs, dropping them down to deep water.
Right.
You're almost fishing more of like the way a surf fisherman would fish. You're casting it.
Absolutely.
You're kind of doing the opposite of surf fishing where you're trying to throw that thing into a couple inches of water and pull that, have it slide out into the deeper water when you're eel fishing along the Elizabeth Islands.
Well, the interesting thing is, the way I describe it is that basically fishing with live eels is as close as you can get to fishing soft plastic with something alive.
Yeah.
I mean, really, because, you're right. I mean, I know the drifting. Well, we were talking before about, having 10 rods with live eels and drifting. But to me, it comes back to casting. I mean, I don't know how you are about stuff. To me, fishing's about casting. Mm-hmm. Okay. I did my bait fishing. Believe me, when I was in college, I used to back my truck up to the parking lot at South Cape Beach and throw a chunk of pogie out when the bluefish were running in the fall or whatever. And, I had a cap and I'd read my, do my work and sit and watch the rod go down. And, I did chunk herring and poppanesset back in the day. But I like to be active. I find, and the same way with eels. It's kind of fun.
It's a living lure, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes they do the thing that the pogie does where it comes to the surface. It's that skipping across and it's a big bass, but not usually because their whole thing is to try to get you down.
They're trying to go hide in the rocks. That's their instinct.
Man, I tell you, that's got to be one of the messiest things in the world is people constantly letting their eel hang up on the bottom. And, you're trying to explain to people because you're drifting. And so the eel, of course, swings out behind the boat. It's like when it gets, reel it in, you got to cast it up current again. Mm-hmm. And for a lot of people, they're not paying attention if they're not catching fish. And, so it's all casting. It's interesting. I've been, the whole circle hook thing. I talked to someone the other day and she was kayak fishing with live eels and they gut hooked a couple of fish. And, we were talking about the size she was using. She was using a 7/0 circle, which is a pretty good size circle. So I was a little surprised, but I didn't get a chance to ask her because I still think they make those offset circles, which isn't a circle hook.
Right. Yeah, they have. So you have to use an inline circle hook so that hook point is going right directly back at the shank, but they make them offset as well to make them easier to bait, easier to put the bait on there.
Right.
Is the whole idea behind those.
Yeah, but I know in Massachusetts those are illegal.
Exactly.
As far as when they're using live bait. So that, I got to say, that's been kind of a challenge a little bit. But it was all casting. I mean, it wasn't any drifting. It wasn't any... What I find amazing is guys surfish. There was something it was Kevin Hearn in that book, Robert Post book,
Reading the Water.
Reading the Water. He fished live eels on the bottom. I'm thinking, how the hell do you fish a live eel on the bottom?
Yeah, without it just making an absolute mess of you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you break the tail or... No, I'm sort of interested, so I'm going to pick your brain because you fish live eels.
I do, and I've never done it that way. No, I don't.
You don't beat the daylights out of her?
I don't. Well, one, part of it is like, man, you're having a bad enough day. Like I don't need to make this worse. And also, especially, and this is mostly around slack tide. I like fishing eels as the current's getting slower.
Right.
And I like having
something...
Because
they spin when the current is going too fast.
Yeah,
they just don't have that natural presentation.
So... And I like having them kick around out there because I feel like it's slack tide. My theory on why slack tide is so good is those fish that I had no access to while the tide was running. They were so buried in the structure in the best spot to eat. That fish is moving to his next spot. And if I have something out there vibrating and putting out scent like a live eel, that's going to get his attention. So that's why I like the eels the slower part of the tide. And that's also why I like them lively.
Do you like big ones?
It varies. Generally, they have to be big enough to cast from the surf, for one. I've heard guys say certain places they like the smaller eels, other places they like the big eels. I'd say ideally 14 to 16 inches is probably perfect.
So you like me. I mean, I see guys that they go for the big, the kahuna ballooners and stuff
the sled
like
dogs. Chris calls them.
Yeah, sled dogs. That's right. That was Chris's. But yeah, I mean, we did the live eel thing back then, but it was, and the fish were more aggressive too. I mean, I think that. I don't know if it's because there were fewer fish and they're smarter or whatever, but they're...
I think when there's more of them, there's definitely more of that competitive aspect. Yeah. Here's the eel. If I don't get it, he's going to get it. So they're naturally going to be more aggressive if they're more abundant.
Yeah, and I also do... It's interesting. I do find... Now, I only use... The heaviest leader material I use is 30 fluoro, even when pitching eels down the Elizabeth. Yeah. And I do think it makes a difference. But the interesting thing about fishing with eels and with bass, I don't know what's the longest run you've ever had from a striped bass before. I've never seen. I've only had a few that really made much more than 20 yards. Maybe 30 yards. From beach, it's got to be different.
I had one that went far enough that I had it in my head that I loosened the drag because I felt I was. Now this is probably ridiculous, but I loosened the drag because the lower the line gets on the spool, the tighter your drag setting
Correct.
gets.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd heard the wind. You know how you get that wind in the
Oh,
line
yeah,
sound?
yeah,
He
yeah.
was so stretched out. I heard that and I go, I got to loosen this drag. So I
Yeah.
loosened it up a little bit before it broke. That was the longest I ever had one run.
Yeah.
Now, whether I probably would have been, I landed the fish. So
Yeah,
whatever I
no.
did worked out. Whether
Yeah,
or not
no,
I
I
needed
mean,
to do it or not.
you know, it's actually interesting because I think that what people's instinct is exact opposite of what you should do. You never tighten it; you back it off.
Exactly.
You want to add
it's
drag, use
naturally
your hand.
tightening. Yeah.
You want to add drag, use your hand. You know, I still get cranked up with people, and I see them fiddling with my drag. I say, don't do that, because I'm using 16 pounds. Most the heaviest I use is 17 pounds mono.
Oh man.
I use 17 pound and a 30 pound, and I use a blood knot. I don't have a swivel. I don't have, and, but the one thing I have found with bass, and I talk to guys in the canal about this, is if you try to horse a bass, it's going to resist against you. And what I found on the islands is you hook the fish. This is with eels. The plugs may be different, but here, it's going to make a run. Now, sometimes they make a run, they go in the rocks, and that's fishing.
Yeah, it's part of the game.
You may not be happy with me, but I'm not using 80-pound leader or 50-pound leader, and not happening. I'm not using braid. Okay, and but typically, if you relax, and I try to tell people, be soft, because it's interesting to watch people who've been fishing like that, how they tense up. They hook the fish and they're gonna rip its freaking head off. Okay, and their whole body, you know, it's like, and it's really true, especially with fly fishing. See guys fly rodding, it's like they're it's like, you know, and so what I tell people is I said, let them run, and then the fish will stop generally. And when it does, relax, try to gain a little, try to turn, and what I find, they swim out. They swim away from shore. And I believe the reason when that happens is because they're trying to get to deep water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially in that situation. You're hooking them in shallow water. They don't want to be fighting in there.
Correct.
They feel safer with more water over their head in that kind of distressing situation.
Yeah. And so they go out, and then what I do is I typically just put the boat between the fish, and it stays out there.
As long as your drag set, it doesn't have to be locked down. I never striper fish with a lockdown drag. I know some guys do, but as long as it's at a good setting where that drag is at least tiring the fish out,
right,
you know, he's going to stop that run. And it's interesting you said the more you pull on the bass, the more he's going to try to get into that structure. This is one of my theories, and it's definitely the home team. It's like some love for the home team. I swear that it's easier to turn up. Now I've never caught a big tarpon. I've caught 30-pound tarpon, but around bridges, and I feel like if I can lock down on them, they will change. They won't like that and will change direction sooner than a striper will.
Yeah, I agree.
Seems like a striped bass of the same size. If I try to do that, he's still getting to the piling, whereas the tarpon's like, hell with this, and he's going to go and bolt the other way.
Right, but, and I think part of that is their where they live. I don't think it has to do with their physical nature, because I was thinking that they both have powerful tails. Tarpons is more of a speed thing. But I think part of it, too, is that with the bass, its whole life has been in rocks, structure. They know it. Tarpon are on sand. Yeah, okay, bridges, but they're still out in the channel, okay? And bass are just, they're the king of the surf. There's no fish that can handle the type of water you fish from shore like a striped bass. That's why catching a fish from the Outer Cape I don't think is the same as at Nobska. But even there they know how to use the troughs and the sand, and they're just a very cool fish. It's interesting that you say that, because sorry, you catch a 150-pound tarpon on 12-pound tippet and you get it to the boat in 20-something minutes. I don't see a 150-pound bass if they got that big.
I will.
caught from shore that you would ever land.
I will put striped bass above everything. I would say all those southern species, they're very cool, but they are not striped bass. Nothing is the striped bass.
No, it's like bonefish. Bonefish, you know, yeah. When you hear 100-yard, they don't make 100-yard run. You know, it's like albies. I know a lot of people get excited, but it's like, whatever.
So this was a description from, I think, originally Saltwater Sportsman back in the day, and I don't know if it was Hal Lyman or Frank Woolner. I'm going to misattribute this quote, but it was like, no fish ranks so high in so many categories as the striped bass in terms of like how it looks, how it fights, where it feeds. Like it just, if you were going to do a kind of a stat sheet for all the fish, the stripers would have the highest average across the board.
It's the perfect fish.
Yeah.
There's no more beautiful fish in the ocean than a perfectly proportioned striped bass. You know, I mean, it really, they just, you know, I kind of just enjoy watching them swim when you bring them and you look at them and they're just regal.
Yeah.
I mean, they're really, you know, the coloration, you know, people talk about all the beautiful colors on mahi and tunas. They light up and they're pretty. But the striped bass just, you know, I mean, I don't think that, as a kid, that was the fish I wanted to catch. If you had offered me a trip to go topping fish, I wanted that first striped bass. You know, that was, you know, I put a lot, and I think a lot of striped bass anglers do. They put a lot of hours, you know, into catching striped bass. And, you know, what you do, you know, surf fishing for bigger striped bass is, to me, it's the penultimate. It is the highest level of fishing that you really, I mean, it's just, and I'll be honest with you, I said to my wife, I said, yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to stopping guiding and buying a pair of waders again, and, you know, and doing some, not the canal, but just walking the beach a little bit, doing some short fishing again. Whether a fly rod or plug, because I miss it. I miss the boats are, yeah, whatever. you go out in boats and stuff like that, but
I do. But to me, for years I wanted my own boat. I'm much happier having Chris Megan own the boats and deal with all the boat related headaches. And
absolutely.
I mean, the other thing about surf fishing too is one, it's like you can go like that. You can go at the drop of the hat if you're fishing from shore.
Well, that's what I miss about it, is the fact that, you know, it's like when you're obsessive about your boat, you know, and you want to keep it clean, and you want to, you know, so it takes me a good 2 hours when I get home.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's all the other thing about boat fishing too is that, I mean, I carry on an average trip between fly and spin 14 rods, all rigged up for different types of things. Surf fishing, you ain't doing that.
No, I just wrote an article on that, on like how, you know, I'm jealous sometimes of the largemouth bass guys who are going out there and like, I would love to be like, and I have my pencil pot. I would need a caddy.
Yeah.
I would need to hire Tommy here, who's behind the camera, to go and cart all my rods around and be like, you know, and then tell me he's like,
caddy.
Yeah.
You know what you need to do is they should start fishing golf, where you have a caddy with the bag,
Exactly.
and your rods in there. Can I have my
Size it up. He's like, that blitz is about 20 yards out. I recommend the 10-foot Lamiglass.
Yeah. Oh, you want to throw
Tom.
you want to throw an SP? Yeah, well, here's an 8-foot spin. You know, yeah, really.
Yeah. But you know, you've got to kind of winnow it down to one. Let's choose the best all around rod that's going to be able to do the most thing, do more things well, but maybe know things perfectly.
Exactly, and that's why, you know, finding the right rod.
But I'm not going to knock boat fishing. I love fishing on boats. It is.
I love boat fishing, and I tell you the truth, one of the reasons I went in is because of the access issue.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of customers who sold their boats and fish with me instead now, and I know that's very common, because when you own the boat, generally you're running the boat, you don't get to fish.
Yes.
So, you know, there's certain advantages and disadvantages. And the other thing about shore fishing, there really is no day when you can't go fishing from shore.
Especially here, because especially the geography of the Cape, like there's somewhere that's going to be protected no matter where the wind's blowing.
Or even if you like white water, I'm sure you're still, you know, young enough and still crazy enough that you like it when the, you know, it's like the Montauk guys. I'm looking, going, really, seriously? Yeah, you wetsuit?
Oh yeah, yep. It's not a pretty sight anymore. I would love to lose 30 pounds, and I could post That's why there's no pictures of me, because I'm in my wetsuit, and it's need to get on Jenny Craig before I can start posting those pictures again. So.
Wetsuiting, I love watching the videos of the guys getting washed off the rocks in Montauk.
Oh, those are great. And
So you see the guy, and here he comes. Whoosh. And, I guess there's probably a certain excitement in the danger element of it, it all comes back to the whole joke. The boat guy is casting to shore, the shore guy is casting at the boat.
Oh yeah. Especially where you're fishing. I mean, practically you'd be hitting me in the boots in a lot of cases with where you're trying to get the eels, and I'd be landed into your cockpit. So it'd be.
I remember Tony Stetsko saying to me, he telling the story of a client, and they get to the, back then you had beach permits, you didn't have to worry about it. And he'd run down the beach, they get out, the guy would get suited up with this fly rod or whatever, and he'd run into the water. Tony would say, you just ran through the fish. And the guy was like, what? And he'd look behind, and the fish are right there. Tony says, yeah, we have to cast from the beach. This is at this point, these fish are in the trough.
Yeah, they're right up.
And they're grubbing sand eels. And you just spooked them all out. I mean, it's kind of, it's really kind of funny when you think about it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, but those are the things about shore fishing, that's the other thing too, is you're so much in, contact with the beach and the water and the whole, sometimes in boats, because, it's interesting. I know a couple of guys who do it, and have you seen the new form of, I call it new, but I'm sure it's been the new form of Valby fishing?
What is it?
What is it? Well, you buy a $500,000 center console with 1,200, and what you do, instead of figuring out where the fish are, and this applies to bass, everything. So what you do, this is how you find fish. You go to a spot, you make 6 casts, then you blow doors at 60 miles an hour to another spot, cast 6 times, then you. And Albie season, I saw someone I knew do it. They started, I ran into them at Tarpaulin Cove. This is serious, Tarpaulin Cove. And there had been some Albies there. And they left, and I hear the motors crank up, and they headed in the direction of Cuttyhunk. And I'm just still sitting there at Tarpaulin, And all of a sudden I see them, and they're going across towards Menemsha. And right across the sound. And then I see them coming up the north side of the vineyard. And they go around West Chop. And they disappear behind West Chop. And then I see them coming from West, blowing across towards Nobska. And then I see them go flying into Woods Hole. And this was all within a matter of an hour.
That's a lot of ground to cover for false albacore.
But that's how people fish now. They can't, the idea of saying, okay, what's the tide? What's the moon? What's the potential with bait movement? What happened yesterday? What's the wind doing? And okay, I feel confident in this spot. So I'm gonna kind of hang. Now, the hard thing is when you're guiding, and you kind of maybe laugh at this, but I tell people, if you like to fish, don't guide.
Yeah. Oh no, I absolutely
the pressure,
believe that.
Okay, and I do the scramble. I wrote about that. I call it the scramble. I go to a spot, I'm comfortable, I feel it's good, and it doesn't immediately shape up. Then I start going, oh, okay, I got it. And I get in this thing. It's like I blow doors out of it and go someplace stupid, and I think to myself, why did I just do that? And then what usually happens, the seas kick up, and now I got to kill myself. So what I'm fortunate I do is I have the people, especially if it's a guy, have their wives pick them up. They don't have to make the ride back and get their brains beaten in with me, so I can spend more time fishing. But when you're shore fishing, hey, pick your spot, okay, and put your good 2-3 hours in, fish the tide, okay, get a couple of fish. Maybe you don't get a couple of fish. Maybe you get a 15-minute window, But at the end of the day,
Oh yeah, it's you get to see it all play out.
Yeah.
That's the thing I like about shore fishing. That's the thing I get into that mode too, even from shore or in the kayak, where they're not here. I'm going to get in the car, go to the next spot. I'm going to get in the car, go to the next spot. And whereas if you would just kind of sat and just kind of let things unfold, and albie fishing, that's a great way to do it. Like they move fast. They can be here one day and 20 miles away the next, but often like it's kind of the slow and steady wins the race with albies.
right? Yeah, I mean, you're going to catch them or you're not going to catch them.
Now, has albie fishing become as the striped bass fishing along the Elizabeths has kind of tapered off? I know it's not what it used to be. Has albies become a bigger part of your season? How's the albie fishery been like compared to when you started guiding versus today?
Well, I think it corresponds to what's happened with striped bass fishing. I think more people fish for albies. I think there's a certain period where I know a lot of guys that just stop fishing for bass completely and just wait for albie season. You know, the old days of summer and working hard to catch bass in the summer, because you gotta work harder. You may have to visit different territory. You fish nights. You know, I mean, nights, you know, that's the lazy thing about hey, go out now. It's like, hey, bass fishing, you know. I changed in the Elizabeths when I started night fishing with eels. I had to make that change when it got a little tougher, and I think the fish were more pressured. I believe fish react to pressure. And I think when there's a lot of striped bass, they eat in a lot of scenarios where people presume they'd never. I mean, it used to be when I was a kid back in that bass only. Oh, you can't catch striped bass during the day. I mean, really. I mean, there were a lot. You know, the old timers used to believe that striped bass were strictly nocturnal feeders. You know, I mean, now that may have been that they were out there fishing during the day and they didn't want other people there with them. So that was a smoke screen, which, you know, fishermen can want to do. But I think the albie fishing has become such a big part of people's fishing season, twofold. I think the striped bass population, and I don't think we have a fall run anymore, a bass. I really, you know, I think the fall, that solely vaunted fall run down the Elizabeth Islands and the Vineyard, yeah, there are fish there, but not the run. Yeah. You know what the run was. The run, New Jersey.
New Jersey gets the run still.
The run now.
I think it's more here. It's more of a kind of they start trickling out in August.
Yes.
And
it starts way earlier than it used to.
Because you can see it. The canal is a great place to see it. Sometimes there's a big run in mid-August of those fish coming from Cape Cod Bay, moving west, and then they're gone. You know, then that's it. And I remember the first time I was seeing that, somebody said to me, this is the start of the fall migration. These fish are heading south. I'm like, don't tell me. It's only August 15th. Like, don't tell me that. But yeah, that was.
Well, yeah, I talk about that all the time. People look at you and go, nah. I said, I'm telling you, the fall run first. I think it happens earlier. And I just think the patterns have changed. And so the other thing, too, is the fish. I think their migrations, there used to be this image that the fish follow a prescribed path. I think a lot of fish go outside in deeper water on the Outer Cape. You know, I think a lot of fish go that way now. I don't think they go through the sounds as much as they used to. And I think part of it could be bait availability, could be, I personally think part of it is the fact that, I really believe in the whole concept of site fidelity, that striped bass go to where they always went. And
like that school of fish is going to go to that same area year after year. I mean, that's fairly well researched. They've hesitate to say proven, but they found that with tagging studies that these fish will return to the same general areas year after year.
Yeah. So if the fish migrate through in the spring to go to Boston Harbor, and those fish spend the summer in Boston Harbor, it doesn't mean they're going to migrate back down and go through the canal. They might, but the percentage of them are going to go. So I think there's a lot of change. But to get back to the albie thing, I just think for a lot of people, they've you know, well, people are obsessed with albies.
They are. Are you not? You're not one of them?
I think they're fun. I'd rather catch bass. I'd rather catch big bluefish. I was out at Wasky.
I'm with you on that one. That's a hot take, big bluefish over albies, but I agree with you.
I was out at Wasky Monday, and there were those humongous. I mean, I don't know where these things came from. It's stupid. I mean, these things are so freaking big out there.
See, that's awesome.
I mean, these things are, scary big, and there's a lot of them. I mean, we lost a lot of plugs to fish running into the leaders, competing over it, and you get the leader back. I got 1 leader where it's 50-pound fluorocarbon, and it shredded up the leader into little curlicues. It's like the tails and whatever were just stripping little pieces of the.
They get so aggressive. If you get a little piece of seaweed or mung on the line, another one will come through and hit that.
Yeah. So it's really I think albies are. I guess part of it is I've used the line 6 million times. You get the same thing all the time. I like albie fishing. I hate albie fishing on Cape Cod. I hate it. I hate it.
So my take on albie fishing, and you can't select for size. Like albie fishing is going to be kind of it's like I'm going to go there, I'm going to catch whatever's there. If you want to stripe bass fish, there's a way to target a bigger striper.
Correct.
Bluefish is a little bit more like albie fishing in terms of it's like whatever's available.
Right.
But still, it's
you can target bigger bluefish.
Yeah.
A little bit. You can. There are play. But you're right. Yeah, it's more like albie fishing.
But still, there's something about the big blues and the aggressiveness of it. And I like albies. I love it for a little bit, but then I get kind of bored with it, which is people are going to think that's crazy because, like you said, people go nuts for albies. But after if I've had 4 good trips, I'm like, that's okay. Let's do something a little bit. It's going to vary a little more.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same way. I mean, I think there's the challenges. Actually, I probably shouldn't talk about this. I have an article idea that I'm going to submit to you guys that's really kind of cool because I took a guy out last year. This was the most eye-opening thing. And it was really cool as you guys, Kevin, had me write about fly rotting for albies in tips. I had just written the article.
Yeah.
And this guy is from Florida, Palm Beach. His name's Scott Hamilton. And my buddy Bob Lewis had, Bob would go down in June to Palm Beach to fish albies because they got a great albie fishery there. Fantastic.
It's ridiculous.
And
down
big
there.
fish. Problem now is that they have an issue with sharks. Bob said like 1 out of every 2 albies gets lopped off by a shark.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Because the sharks, it's like anything else, like great white sharks off of the Outer Cape. They're smart.
Yeah, they know where they're getting
where's
good.
Dinner, And so I wrote this article, and and Kevin, God love him, Kevin, it's like, no, Kevin, I don't know anything about albies any better than you. Please don't, just, there are a lot of guys who know more than I do. So Scott came up, he was doing a talk, and my buddy Bob said, Scott wants to catch striped bass down to Elizabeth. He has no interest in albies. None. Could care less about albies. So we went down the islands, and there was a good 2-week period where the Elizabeth. I think the albie fishing has gotten better down the Elizabeth myself.
That was going to be one of my questions. It seems like albie fishing's been improving.
Definitely. Down there. No, yeah. It is improving up here. And it'll be interesting to see what the tagging studies do.
They put some acoustic tags in the albies to see how they survive catch and release. And kind of where they go. So.
Where they come. Because the fish down in Florida and in North Carolina, we don't get toads up here. We don't get 20-pound albies up here.
From the mid-Atlantic South, they're definitely seeing like 15, like you said, to 20-pound albies. Yeah. And we do not, you'll get them in the canyons once in a while. But
right.
We're not seeing inshore. Generally, you're looking at 4 to 10 pounds.
It's the same with bonito.
Yeah.
I mean, why are some years in Bonita absolutely pits and other years, I mean, I don't know. Fish swim, they have tails. So, but anyways, so Scott comes, he goes out, we go out, and he wants to catch bass. Cool. So I had a couple spots where there have been a ton of bass, and there were also albies there too. But the bass were in the rocks, and the albies are outside. Perfect. We get there, and he makes his own fly. He's got some patterns he's designed. He's got one big foam slap-sided popper. I mean, it's that big.
Oh, yeah.
But he throws it at albies. He chucks the thing out. The albies start bubbling and stuff like that. So he just chucks it out, strips it twice, bang. Fish in the boat.
Albie.
Like, Bubble, bubble, throws the thing out, strip, bang. Albie in the boat. And I'm like, third cast. This is 3 casts in a row. Third cast. That big bang. Albie in the boat. And I'm looking and going, now wait a minute. I mean, here we are throwing albie whores and throwing all these fancy patterns. He's using a floating line and and the foam is that thick.
Oh, man.
And he's just, I mean, these fish are blowing this thing out of the water. And I'm like, this is strange. And then, because when he came on the boat, he has a freshwater fly rod with him. And I'm like, why the hell's he bringing that? He says to Bob, he says, start the timer. Chucks a fly out, a smaller version, but still, on a 4-weight.
Oh, man.
Bang! Albie. Less than 2 minutes at the boat.
Really? Well, they get a lot of practice down in Florida. To
Okay,
be fair.
but no, my point is, a lot of this is, we make it so freaking hard. And people, it's the same thing as Andy Mill catching big tarpon. If you took me out with the fly rod and had a string of 150-pound tarpon coming down, I've caught baby tarpon, but 150, I would probably wet my pants. And you watch someone like Andy Mill, and it's like, puts a cast there, strip, boom, yeah, thank you very much. And it's the same thing with this guy. And the basic premise of Scott's thing is we give these fish too much credit. We just, they're just another fish. And it was mind-blowing. It took everything I ever thought about albie fishing. And I told him, I said, you've ruined me for life. I said, I am never going albie fishing again.
Oh, because you're like, oh, man, they're on anchovies today, so we better get a mushmouth fly on there. And it's got to be this size. It has to be tan. Oh, no, today they're on snot bait, so scale everything down. And he's just throwing a popper out there and getting their attention and getting them to hit it.
Yeah, and he's just blowing it, and he's not stripping like a maniac.
And part of that, there's probably a lot of, like, he catches them all the time down in Florida. He comes up, we get 4 weeks of albies.
Yeah.
So you kind of, the knees start shaking when they're in there. You
Absolutely.
got to get the cash just right, especially fly fishing. I've never, talking about fly fishing, being a purist, I caught one on the fly this year, trolling a fly behind my kayak.
Listen.
Yeah, well, I know what it is. It's not. It's not really. It doesn't count. And I broke my fly rod fighting it, so it was kind of like that's what you get. But
no, you know what? Listen, you guys with the fly rod and a kayak. It's like when talking with Kevin. I said, to me, it goes to that whole thing about fishing. It's like fly fisherman. You know what my definition of a fly fisherman is? It's someone who takes something which is really simple and tries to make it as complicated as possible. No. Put a worm on a hook. Put a silverside on a hook. Drift it in the current, whatever. You're going to catch a fish. No, fly fishermen are going to make it complicated. And I would, you're welcome to include this thing. There are a whole lot of fly fishermen who shouldn't be wasting their time. Okay? Because they don't work at it. They don't try to get better. They don't understand certain basic principles. It's like
The fly casting takes work. It takes practice to
fly
do.
casting, straight line presentations. Like I tell people, if your leader is all screwed up when it hits the water, even if it's doing this, you got to strip it 12 times before the fly even moves. You're not even in contact with it. So if you can't, it comes back to, don't give me 12 shitty casts. Give me one good one. Because people try to make 12 casts
Yeah.
in one. The lines flying, the things are going all the way there. I'm going, okie dokie, this is not going to end up good. And that's why I tell you that, that's why I respect some guys. It's like, you know what? I've hooked fish people I've helped people hook bass with my boat. They throw it out there. I see that things are screwed up. It's not working. I just put the boat in reverse and start backing, and the plug starts popping.
Yeah.
Bang. Okay. Boop. Neutral. Okay. But the cold kayak thing, casting a fly rod out of kayak, it's the worst.
Yes,
it
you
is.
can end it right there. It's the worst. I hate fly casting out of my kayak, but Kevin is a glutton for punishment with it, but he's getting better at it. Like it's watching him, seeing him do it over the last like 3 or 4 years since he's been serious. But it's practice. He's out there casting. Whereas I pick up the fly rod when the albies are here. I'm like, I'm ready to catch my albie on the fly now. And then all my casts are going 15 feet. And I'm like, well, what's happening? It's like you said, people don't want to put in the work to get good at it.
Well, it's the challenge. Don't we all challenge ourselves? Isn't that kind of the fun about fishing? Okay, it's like Joan Wolf's thing. You've heard of Joan Wolf's thing, okay? Oh, yeah. First, you just want to catch a fish. Then you want to catch a lot of fish. Then you want to catch a big fish. Then you want to catch a lot of big fish. And then you want to catch the difficult fish.
Right, the fish, the one.
The difficult fish, And I think that, that says a lot of it, and again, what you said was so true before about the rules. Okay, and if you've been fishing a long time, it's really easy to kind of look at other people and just roll your eyes and kind of go, but you just kind of say, you know what, we all went through.
Everybody's at a different part in their kind of fishing evolution, So as much as you want to be, you see somebody like just tossing a striper back in without trying to revive it, and you want to be like, hey, idiot, But no, could be me 20 years ago where I didn't know any better, and I'm just kind of flipping them in. You learn. Every year you do this. Every trip you go, you learn a little bit more, and you get a little bit better.
Yeah, and so that's My favorite picture that I have is, I forget who took it. It was of me standing on a jetty in Popponesset. I got a little freshwater bait casting outfit. And I'm picking a backlash out. Man, I tell you, when I was going out fishing, I couldn't afford a spinning reel. We had bait casting reels. Well, we fished hand lines, but, you could get, everything was a bait caster because that was available. And, man, I picked up, oh, God, I was the king of backlashes. I could backlash the living, out of one of those rods like nobody's business, But, things change. Evolution, fishing is evolving, and that's what, you guys with the magazine. You're trying to try to show the evolution, but I think it's important to also just try to keep cognizant, and that's the hard thing. That's where my grumpy old man routine gets into. Okay, honestly, is that I think the younger generation is forgetting. I had so much respect for the older generation, those guys. I still do, and I'm not sure we're doing a great job of passing that legacy on, that remembrance of the history. I don't know. And again, I can't say you would know because you deal with more people being in here.
Yeah, that's a tough. That'd be a tough one to answer. I think that in a lot of it comes from where people get their fishing information now. And social media is right now where social media is it's about 10-second to 30-second clips of just showing the absolute pinnacle of the fishing experience. The hookup, the topwater blast, things like that. So people are seeing that, whereas before it was the older generation handing down this knowledge. Now anybody with an Instagram account can be like, okay, top waters, canal. You get your bullet points of what you need to do to be successful from that, as opposed to so some of the reverence of the the guys who have been doing it for 50 years, 60 years is not, I wouldn't say as strong as it used to be. But it still exists.
Yeah.
Fishing still has its luminaries and always will.
But it's all everything's changed, but everything's the same. It's still the person who puts his time in, works at his craft, thinks about what they're doing. They're just going to catch more fish, and they're going to still catch that, like with you. I mean, there aren't a whole lot of guys probably on the Cape, I could say, who've caught a 50-pound bass in the last 10 years on the Cape from shore.
Yeah, well, not that are talking about it, I guess.
Huh?
Not ones that are being public about it, but.
Well, I'm saying I'm willing to bet it's a handful. I could probably count them on two hands. I'm talking about the Cape. From beach. There were a few that come out of the canal every year, but from the beaches, real beaches, that's damn impressive. Very, very, very impressive, And like I said, it's the guy with the 50-pound. I was like, you got the wrong guy. I just, it's like I catch it and it goes back in the water.
Yeah.
I don't. To me, fish come in three sizes: small, medium, large. It makes it easier.
But you're taking people to such a beautiful and kind of a historic part of the Northeast and the coast. The Elizabeth Islands, Monomoy Rivers, but the Elizabeths especially. There's nowhere like that.
I have a presentation, and actually I'm going to be doing something with a drone and a videographer about the islands. And I've done a lot of study of the history of the islands and things, and it's a different world. And it's hard to explain to even people who live on Cape Cod their whole life, and like the guys out of Osterville and stuff, they all go east. Yeah. They never come out of Osterville and go right. They always go left. So they have no idea about what that place is like.
It does. It feels like a world apart. And I was trying to do a little research on it, kind of some quick Googling, just about the Elizabeth Islands, first discovered by Europeans in 1602 by Bartholomew Gosnold, yep, and then named for Queen Elizabeth I.
Yep.
And even now, to say I think the population at Cuttyhunk year-round is somewhere, it's below 100.
Oh, way below.
And then swells to maybe 400 in the summer, and that's the most populated of the islands.
Absolutely. The rest of them are all owned by the same family. But the reality is that you're going to be able to go there 100 years from now, 200 years, they're going to look the same.
Yeah.
They're not going to be developed. The one thing that'll get you thrown on my boat, I say as a joke, is when I go down and you're on my boat and I take you on the islands and you say, this would be a great place for a golf course. Oh, this would be a great place for a hotel. Oh. It's like, you better be ready to swim home because I'm going to throw your ass off my boat. No, this...
It's perfect just how it is.
Yeah, just leave it alone. It's another world and it's another place. And there aren't that many places around like that anymore.